Welcome back, Planeswalkers, to another episode of the Hive Mind. My name is Jon Dunning. This is the show where I traverse the multiverse in search of other prominent members of the Magic the Gathering community. I pulled not one, not two, but three prominent members outside from all over the corners of the multiverse this time. But before I tell you who that group is, I want to tell you to go to cardsphere.com. That's right, cardsphere.com is simply the very best place to buy, sell, and trade your paper Magic the Gathering cards online. You can also head on over to inkedgaming.com, enter a promo code HiveMindMTG to receive 10% off your purchase. But without further ado, from all corners of the multiverse, I have from EDHRECcast, Matt Morgan, Joey Schultz, Dana Roach. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
What's going on, John?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, this is a party. This is usually the Hive Mind is more of like a one-on-one experience. This is more in line of like a Tin Street Hooligans, but this is a very special occasion. I've had other podcast members on before, but not an entire podcast, so I feel very honored to have the trio join me tonight, so thank you.
Yeah, we're coming in like an EDH wrecking ball, you could say.
Stop.
Oh, I will not stop. I will absolutely not stop.
I mean, that's fine. You can have your wordplay. I'll have my dad jokes, and we'll call it even.
Gentlemen, are you all joined by special beverages tonight from your corners of the multiverse?
What do you have there, Matt?
So I have some Oban Scotch. I believe it's 12-year, room temperature, as it should be. And I may have poured a little too much on accident because I didn't realize how big this mug is.
Perfect. Do you have a special guest tonight, Joey?
I'm a teetotaler. I've just got water. Dana's drink seems much more interesting.
All right, on to Dana.
Joey's not allowed to drink, actually. Fun fact.
I drink. I just don't.
Very nice.
Dana, that seems like an absolute monster.
That's a Tropical Storm Betty.
I love the straw.
It's refreshing.
Very nice. I'd like to get everyone's Magic origin stories, but we'll save that for a second. First, one of my favorite new questions on the show is, how has Magic the Gathering affected your guys' life in a positive way? And we'll go around the horn. We'll start with Matt.
So Magic probably has given me a social structure. So I've moved around a couple times the past few years. Most recently, about a year ago, I actually moved to Colorado from Missouri. So I met some people on Twitter. I know Chris Combs, he's a buddy of mine that I knew through Jason Alt, who they knew somehow or another. But so it just got me into social structure when I moved to Colorado. It was really great just to have something common to bond over and meet new people. And yeah, it's just given me a whole bunch of just lifelong friends. I have groups of friends from pretty much anywhere that I've ever lived that play Magic that I still talk to daily. So yeah, it's just been a good place to, no matter what I'm doing, no matter where I go, I have somebody that I can sit down and talk to about something in common.
Theme, the gathering aspect of the game, the
100%.
The fact that this thing like brings people like us together, people from around the world, different countries, all that is always like such an important part, especially to me too. How about you, Dana?
Yeah, I mean, that's like probably a cliched answer, but I will use the same exact one. That's kind of how I make friends nowadays.
Sure.
And like, I think generally speaking, the good friends you make are people that you have some kind of a shared interest or passion with. And when you're young, it's kind of easy to do that because, number one, you're young and everything is passionate, whether it's music or whatever it is you're doing. But at a certain point in your life, that stuff doesn't hit you the same way. It's like, what am I going to do? Be talking about music with another 40-year-old dude? Like, that's not, there's no shared experience there, really. Whereas Magic does give you that connection to somebody. It gives you something to talk about on a whole bunch of different levels. It gives you like a shared passion. And like the good friends I've made as an adult, especially for the most part, have been through Magic.
Absolutely. And Joey, why don't you round us out?
Also a similar experience, just as a direct example, when I first met one of my college roommates. I was like, I don't know about this guy. Is this going to be an actual friendship? Is this going to be like an awkward roommate situation? I looked up and saw that he had Magic cards on the shelf. I'm like, oh, we're going to be friends. And we have been. We're super friends for life. But it also has just been a really nice way to keep in touch with like old friends from even primary school. Like that's how long I've been playing this game. And what's even cooler is that actually my entire family plays. So it's like a thing that we do like as a game night whenever I go to visit them as well. So yeah, it's a whole big thing. It's got a lot of connection involved for me, definitely.
That is awesome. That's usually a rarity too, is getting the whole family involved. Let's talk about Magic Origins. This is usually a quick question, but this is going to be, I can't wait for. You guys are such different individuals on the podcast. I love, even though you have great chemistry on your show, but I don't think I ever heard like exactly where it all started for you guys. So let's start with Dana.
So I had an older friend that went off to college when I was still in high school. And when he came back that summer, he brought Magic cards with him. And I think that was the summer that Legends came out. So the game was pretty early in its existence then. And I mean, I bought Legends packs and some revised packs then and started playing fairly seriously. I acquired Moxen and things of that nature. But we primarily were playing several hundred card singleton decks. Where that came from, I don't know, but that was what we played, like one card of one kind, and they weren't 100 card, we're talking like 200 card decks. Nice. And then at some point, I would guess roughly Ice Age era, I was then at that point in college, and I had a roommate that kind of had a breakdown and stole a bunch of stuff from all the other roommates, including my Magic cards. So he sold my entire collection to a pawn shop for like $10 or something. Ooh. And at that point, right. So then I'm like, I'm done. I'm not going to try to reacquire those cards, because at that point, those dual lands were up to like $10 a piece. I'm not going to try to pick those back up at that cost. So then I was done. I didn't play again until Return to Ravnica. I was out for, 15 years probably at that point. And I had a coworker who I knew played, and he was talking about the game enough that I'm like, well, maybe I'll pick up the tablet version. I think it was Duels, was on like the iPad at the time. I'm like, I'll try it and see how the game has changed. And it was right back into the arm. I was playing since then.
You know what? Duels got me too, man. I was very similar. I think I stopped playing at Kamigawa and then was gone until Innistrad. But it was Duels of the Planeswalkers that completely sucked me back in. And it's so funny too, because now you see people playing Arena, and I'm just like, I just started playing Arena recently. And I'm like, wow, this is Duels, but further.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. It's crack. It's crack.
Yeah.
Matt, take it away. Your Magic origin story.
So my origin story, I want to say 5th grade, 6th grade or so. My cousins actually. So I had some older cousins that were in high school, and when you're 6th grade, you have older cousins, like they're the coolest thing ever. So they got me hooked on all my nerd things, introduced me to Magic, Final Fantasy, Dungeons & Dragons, all that kind of fun stuff. So I was playing, and I remember the first card that I ever thought was unbeatable was Jothole Worm. And I was like, well, what is this text on there? Like, no, don't worry about the text. It's just a 6/6. And I believed them because they were so cool. So I played a lot through middle school, but I got to high school, and I started playing sports and took over. So I took a long break. Until 7-8 years ago, I want to say, Theros pre-release. My best friend, I had moved to a new town. My best friend had kind of been casually playing with a bunch of other people, his brother too. So they took me to a Theros midnight pre-release, and I was like, all right, I played Magic a little bit. I should know what's going on. And I opened up a pack, and my first card that I saw was Stormbreath Dragon. I was like, okay, there's a dragon. But then I kept going, and I looked at it, I was like, guys, what the hell does scry mean? And so they had to explain that. They're like, okay, a lot has changed, Matt. It's okay. But so we started playing casually. My favorite first real deck, I guess, I called it Into the Scrying Pan, because everything had scry on it.
And you make fun of me for my puns. Are you kidding me? Come on.
No, I'm all about the words. But yeah, so I just started playing there. I got deep into Standard a little bit. Then I realized it's so much to keep up with, and just for as much as I got to be playing, went away from that, got deep into Modern Legacy. I still play competitively. I have a single pro point to my name. I day 2'd and finished 10-5 at GP Louisville, playing Legacy, and my first GP, actually. That was kind of fun. But I love playing competitive Magic. That's kind of my role in the podcast. And then I get to play Commander as just a way to cleanse the palate, kind of play that bounce house Magic where nothing really matters and everybody just gets to have fun, and it's great.
Nice. And Joey, when did your spark ignite?
I like the way that question is phrased. Let's see. I actually started with Darksteel, sort of that original Mirrodin block. It didn't really stick, but it was kind of cool because, like I mentioned, that my family plays, and I think the reason that my entire family plays, they kind of realized, me and my brothers, like my parents realized that if they wanted to actually have conversations or relationships with all of us kids, that they would have to, do the geeky stuff that we like doing too. So each member of my family took a different color. I actually got red. My mom got blue. My stepdad, he got black. My brothers got white and green, and we would just all play and learn together. That was like really cool, but it wasn't until the original Ravnica, another friend of mine came over, one who I wasn't playing Magic with, and he introduced me to this card called Lightning Helix, and then another one called Watchwolf, and I'm like, well, this is absolutely ridiculous, and I absolutely have to start playing now. And I just sort of bounced around from there. The Lightning Helix card just took me by storm. I'd been playing, I'd been slotted with red in my family, so I was like, oh, well, I can deviate into another color, I guess, and I played Lightning Helix, and then from there, I was like, well, maybe I'll try something else, and then Guild Pact came out, and I was like, ooh, is it? And then Dissension came out, and I was like, wait, I can do other things, and then, Time Spiral and Future Sight happened, and then everything just went haywire. So it's, just been kind of a while, but just sort of ever since that very first Lightning Helix, I haven't been able to stop playing Magic.
Well, I mean, the fact that you started in Darksteel or Mirrodin block at all and stayed, it says a lot. That was like, I lived through, it took me Urza's Saga and then Mirrodin, where I'm like, okay, something's wrong with this game. And then Kamigawa came out and I was bored to tears. Little did I know it would be one of the greatest EDH sets of all time later on. But, Matt, let's go back to you real quick. Like you said, you do like competitive Magic as well, and I want to hear kind of, so you said Legacy's kind of your favorite competitive style of play.
Modern and Legacy both, yeah. So I have a group, we used to call ourselves Team Gristle-Dad, just because everybody was a dad for some reason, I don't know. But we always traveled to tournaments. We did the IQ grind in Missouri. But yeah, so it was really Modern and Legacy that are the two big ones that we played a lot. Like I said, we did play a whole lot of Standard. We wish we did now, because Standard now is actually really great. One of our buddies, actually, he's on the play design team, John Pennick. So it's super cool seeing a guy that, we used to play with, and we were like, okay, John, help us with these decks. And he just next leveled us all day. And now he's actually playing for, or working for Wizards, which is really cool. But yeah, so Modern and Legacy are my two big competitive formats.
What's your Modern deck?
My Modern deck right now, I bounce between Infect and Shadow, the Grixis Death Shadow. My heartstrings want me to play Bant Company all day, though, just because Spellqueller and Collected Company and Kitchen Finks are just the best things ever. So, yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Anaya Allies. I love Coco, but now, and I'm kind of jumping around. We'll get to that later, but with all the slivers coming out, I might have to switch my tribe as far as my Coco deck goes. But Joey, do you play any other kind of competitive style formats?
Anytime that there's a pre-release, I really like to go. The only deviation that I go into is occasionally, and the odd Modern tournament here or there, because Modern is a place where I get to play Living End, which is my favorite Modern deck. Sure. I am the resident necromancer on the EDHREC podcast, so it is no mystery that I would play Living End in Modern. Aside from that, though, it's mostly going to be Limited, and then also Commander, because Commander is awesome. I'm not as experienced with Matt as Matt is.
How much are you liking War Limited?
So far, I'm really enjoying it. Draft more than sealed, but regardless, I'm really, really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dana, let's round the question out. Are you a big fan of Draft, Modern, Standard, any of the other crazy formats out there?
I enjoy watching them, but I honestly just don't have time to play anything else. And when I do find time in my schedule to play, I just play Commander for the most part. I have a Modern deck I play twice a year, and not well. And the only reason I have that was because I got a good deal at my local gaming store on whatever box had Horizon Canopy in it, whichever master set that was. Yeah. And I cracked 3 Horizon Canopies in the deck, or in the box. So I'm like, well, I might as well build Boggles now, because those are the only cards in it that cost money besides the ley lines.
Yeah.
So I have a Modern Boggles deck that I play, a couple times a year. It has the added advantage of I don't have to know what's going on around me. Like, I can just play blind and not care what's happening and not have to know a thing about Modern. So that's useful for someone who almost never plays as well. But that's primarily it. I have limited time, so I'd rather play the game I know.
Do you jam Arena at all?
I just I played it when it was in beta like a year ago for a few weeks, and I just reinstalled it Monday night, I think, and played a couple games. So I'm just kind of trying to get back into that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, it's fun. They just released something as of, I think, today, where it's like play through the story, and it's literally just, it gives you
nice
Planeswalker Tribal, and that's all you have is just lands and Planeswalkers, and it forces you to play against, PvP people, and it's fun, but each freaking match was like an hour long, because you just have this giant mass of Planeswalkers upticking and downticking, and it's an absolute mess, but it's a fun mess.
Sounds like an average game at EDH, to be honest.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's great.
So let's talk. I don't know if you guys have talked much about Modern Horizons yet, or at least publicly. What are some of your early thoughts on the impact and the implications that they're going to have on your guys' format?
I mean, I'll take it a step back even further and say, between Dominaria a year ago and Battle Bond and War of the Spark and now Modern Horizons, I mean, the last 13 months have changed Commander probably more than any point in time until the precons came out. I mean, it's been an embarrassment of riches in the last 13 to 14 months, and it looks like Horizons so far is continuing that.
Absolutely. Joey?
I gotta be honest, Modern Horizons hasn't blown me away personally. The new slivers look fantastic. Morphon looks cool. Captain Cisse, absolutely love it. I'm really happy about Generous Gift. I'm glad that they finally understood that Beast Within is not a green effect, that it's actually a white effect. Yeah. Little things like that. Force of Vigor looks really cool, but nothing has like completely tugged at my heartstrings just yet. But we're at like day 3 of spoilers, so I'm not unhappy. I'm just not like, oh my goodness, this is phenomenal, the way that I was with Battle Bond. But that's fine. It doesn't have to be for it to still be real good.
Yeah, sure. And then Matt, you could kind of give me your take on it from EDH and Modern, since you're the Modern player of the group.
I think it's going to be absolutely nuts. Like, Giver of Runes is absolutely insane for Modern. It's just crazy. Like, giving my buddies who play Legacy, we're trying to debate if it's going to be kind of a 5th and 6th 1-drop for Death and Taxes, for example. Fact or Fiction is going to be really interesting in Modern. Yeah. Force of Vigor. I mean, all the forces for Modern, I think, will get some amount of play. I really like Scale Up. I know it's just an uncommon, but making a Glistener Elf a 6/4 on turn 2 with another pump spell usually means you win. And I'm okay with that. So
there hasn't been a ton of cards, I don't think, where you're like, oh, that goes in every single deck.
Right.
But there's been a bunch, like almost every card is a card where I go, oh, I know what deck that goes into. Oh, I've seen that deck that wants that. I've seen the deck that's going to play, that and that.
It just feels like it's touching on a really old design space too. I know I'm kind of in the same age group right now, maybe Joey excluded, but I mean, you guys remember Magic from the old days, and doesn't it feel like old design? Like, we have Vanishing again. There's of course the snow-covered lands and all that, but it's just, there's so many like older keywords that I'm just like, wow, I haven't seen this in so long. And some of these cards that they're printing, it makes it seem like it's just like stepping right up to the design, the reserve list cards. like they made a better Master of Decoy, and it was almost like a troll. You know, it was just like, oh, we can't make Master of Decoy because I think it's on the reserve list, but here's a better one. So it's tricky what Wizards is doing, and it's just the design. It just feels like an old set that's being produced.
When they said that they modeled it after Time Spiral, like it really feels like we're at Time Spiral 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my buddies, he's big into old school, so he finally bought his, I think it was third or fourth Jusum Jin, and then they literally 20 minutes later spoiled Ravenous Giant. He's like, this is so dumb.
Yeah, it feels very, I don't know if adventurous is a word or bold is the word, but it feels like we're in a point in the last year or so. It's not just this set. I think it's also War of the Spark. It's also, Battle Bond to a degree and Dominaria to a degree, where they're just like, oh, let's take a chance and see what happens with this.
Yeah.
They're kind of, I don't know, it's not reckless, but it's like they're trying to push the boundaries in a way that's really kind of exciting to see. And it's very exciting and energizing to be part of that and see these sets that come out and are surprising. They're consistently surprising to me in the last year or so.
It feels like when they're trying to do that too, they're more cognizant of things that could be broken, unlike when they're just like, oh, we're going to make Kaladesh, and they're just like, here's all these cards. Oh, crap, a lot of these are too busted, or, new Emrakul, where it's like when they know they're pressing touching on the boundaries, that's when it takes a lot of balls, so to speak, to make a Oops All Planeswalkers set and to get it right. Time will tell. We're still kind of in its infancy, but it doesn't look like anything's really inherently broken, which I don't think that. I think they're really kind of doubling down on design and making sure and playtesting.
Yeah, we've said that a couple times on the podcast too, just how great the design team, just R&D in general, for Wizards. I mean, they've just really stepped up probably the past, like Dana said, since Dominaria, the past year or so. It's just been crazy because you can tell what's designed for Standard, what's designed for Commander. There's no like 8-mana spell that Standard players like, well, that's a Commander card, and then Commander players like, no, not really. Like everybody has something in every single set, and there's a card that somebody can say, oh, that's probably a Commander card, and they're like, yeah, that's really a Commander card.
Yeah, for sure.
One of my favorite things about the Modern Horizons set too is like they keep breaking the fourth wall in the flavor text. Like I don't know, it's just a small thing, but like you mentioned Giver of Runes, for example, in her flavor text, it mentions family because it is a callback to Mother of Runes, which is of course a family title. Or like the card Diabolic Edict, in its flavor text, it actually tells you how to play the card. Or there's like some other spell that does damage based on the number of cards you've drawn this turn. And then in the flavor text, it's just like, it's like a bolt from a brainstorm. And I'm just like, well, yeah, because when you brainstorm, it's like a lightning bolt. Like or Umezawa's charm. It's just like, oh, he's charming, and a charm means it has 3 options on the spell. Like they're just like breaking the fourth wall, tearing it to shreds, and just looking right at us and saying, this is a magic-based magic set. Love it, and we do.
Deadpool is very popular, Joey.
Yes, yeah, it's a very Deadpool kind of set.
Let's take it back to Commander, fellas. What was it about the Commander format that you guys just absolutely fell in love with, that you kind of took that format on as your mantle? I know, Dana, you said that inadvertently you kind of were playing Commander before there was a Commander because you had these giant 200 stack of cards for your decks. Is that just like the origin and the feel for it as far as your love for it goes?
Yeah, exactly. Like when I came back, I just kept thinking of playing those games back when I first started playing Magic, where we're sprawled out on the floor playing like a 3 or 4 player game with these giant decks, and we have to get up and move over, to a different room because someone played a Scheherazade, and then someone sub-plays a Ring of Maroof in that deck to get the Scheherazade from the first game, so we have to move to a third room to play a third sub-game. And that feeling of something that's that ridiculous. Like when I came back, I enjoyed playing the tablet version, but I was like, how do I do that in Magic? Is there like a format that does that? And there was kind of like, much to my shock, there was a format that kind of let you do that, and it was basically an extension of what I played when I got taught how to play Magic, except for you had a commander outside the deck instead of in it. It was just a natural fit.
Nice. Matt?
So Commander for me was a chance to kind of take a break from having to be right and make the right decisions and just think critically about the game. So like I said, you can almost do whatever you want. If you want to make a theme deck, you can. If you want to make this, that, or the other. I mean, there's a lot of creative freedom with Commander, whereas with 60 card formats, you're working with, do I want 2 or 3 or 4, or trying to work through those problems. And it's just for me, it's a different deck building experience, different goals for the format, I guess. Whereas, yeah, like I said, you don't have to worry about being right in Commander near as much. Sure, you might want to play and win the game every now and then, but with Commander, if you mess up, oh darn, we're just going to play again. But when I was playing 60 card formats, it was more, oh, I messed up, crap, there goes my entire tournament. So just having that pressure taken off the game gave me a way to enjoy it in a little bit different way. So that was my big pull into Commander.
Yeah, it's more of the spectacle, right? It's just, I feel like people play Commander more for those big moments than. Yeah. I mean, there are competitive Commander players for sure, but yeah, it's definitely those big aha moments and that you get to talk about with your buddies, over the weekend. Water cooler moments. That was at the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. You can't cast Rishkar's expertise in Modern as much as you want to.
As much as you exactly.
Confession: I actually did not like Commander the first time I played it.
Sure, I didn't either.
It just sort of felt like, oh, this is arbitrary. It took Wizards of the Coast actually creating a Commander product in 2011 for me to even kind of consider it. But just the fact of its multiplayerness was immediately a draw. Once I was like, oh, the actual company is endorsing this format, maybe I'll deign to play it. Sort of knocked me off of my stubbornness there. But then the fact that it was multiplayer was definitely a draw. But also, I just love deck building. I'm of the Johnny Jenny persuasion. I like expressing myself in my deck builds, and nothing is going to let you do that better than a Commander deck. The Commander is a thesis statement, and then the rest of the deck is built to support that. And I know I'm an English major, so that's a really cheesy metaphor, but I'm sorry. That's just sort of how I feel. I don't get that same expression as I do in 1v1 formats, and so Commander was just a natural way to express that, which is why I have so many decks now, because I need to express myself a whole lot.
And then, of course, I would be remiss not to ask an esteemed EDH panel such as you gentlemen, who are your favorite Commanders? You could either tell me about just your all-time favorite one, or maybe just a quick rundown of your top 3, or however many you'd like. And Joey, we'll stay with you. Look, what I want to do in life is death. Necromancy is the best part of living. So I've got Mimeoplasm, I've got Teysa, I've got Marin. Lord Windgrace takes lands out of the graveyards for me. If that has something to do with graveyards, then that's where I am. Perfect. You're my kind of player. Dana?
My favorite Commanders would be, in decks I run, it would be Recce, History of Kamigawa, because it's a deck that just nobody plays, and it's kind of gotten to be my signature thing. And my Glissa the Trader deck, I love Glissa as a commander. She does weird things in those colors that you don't expect green and black to do. Yep. And there's a lot of versatility in the deck you can build, and you can use it as kind of a showcase for your own creativity, and I'm a big fan of that as well.
Yeah, man, Glissa the Trader is such a fun deck. And Matt?
So I'd be remiss to well, actually, I can just use the cards closest to me. So I have March the Multitudes. I am Mr. Selesny on the podcast. Miri Weatherlight Duelist is so fun. I love everything green-white does. I have a Day's Undoing that I need to put into Niv Mizzet, actually. Niv Mizzet Perrin. That's kind of my, hey, we're all going to have fun, but if you don't want to have fun and try hard the table, I'll play Niv Mizzet and we can go back to having fun when you're done. And then Omnath Locus of Rage, I think that's probably my longest living deck. I can't take myself away from it. I almost built a Throwmock the Insatiable deck, because we did an episode about that actually on the podcast, and I was really tempted to turn Omnath into Throwmock, but I was like, man, I can't. This deck is just too fun. I have it figured out. It's really good, and I just enjoy playing it. So I would say Omnath is my number 3.
Yeah, those are all great. EDHREC is something that I found kind of early on in my deck building days, my early deck building days of EDH, because like Joey said, I was not so convinced that I liked the format at first. I was just like, no, I'm here for modern or standard, and I just need to win and run people over. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? Those people that are playing with those giant decks are actually laughing and smiling and enjoying life. Maybe I'll go sit with them. And then I'm like, oh, okay, how do you do this? And what better place was there at the time, or arguably still, than EDHREC? And I joked about it in my early like deck tech videos, where I'm just like, this is not an EDHREC type deck. This is, I make what I want. I like to brew my own. But I've come to just absolutely love this site, because it's more than kind of just what it is on face value, just telling you how to build your decks. You got fantastic articles, fantastic podcasts, obviously, and I'll have to throw a bone to my brother from another, Mr. Jason Alt, for putting a lot of that into play. But yeah, how did you guys initially find the site, and then what was your relationship to it, and what's your role now besides on the podcast?
Here's the thing. I don't remember how I heard about EDHREC. It just sort of feels like it's always been constantly a presence, almost like Magic the Gathering itself, which I know is a totally silly thing to think, but that's just how it feels in my brain now. I don't remember how it is that I came across the site, but once I did, I could not get enough. It was just so useful as a tool to find obscure gems for like X or Y strategy or X or Y commander, just like obscure cards that I had never heard of that were just all sort of crowdsourced onto this one website. But what was even more fun was like actually interrogating that data and using the advanced filters features or things like that to see how all of these different factors would influence card choices. And I was just using it so much at that point that when I saw that EDHREC was going to start creating article content, I basically already had my pitch ready to go. I had a sample article halfway written by that point, so I just finished it and sent it off. I was just ready because I've kind of always wanted to contribute to Magic in some way. And thankfully it worked out. Jason liked my pitch. I'm writing the Commander Showdown series where I take two commanders that maybe are kind of similar and then compare and contrast them for, different deck building strategies and styles. But then when the article editor stepped down, Henry Stukenborg, when he was like, I'm a little busy, I'm going to take off for a different project, I was just like, me, please pick me. And thankfully they liked me. I think that I'm pretty good. Again, English major. So I've also taken over for editing the articles on there too. I make creature types and prevent them from being creature typos.
Stop. I knew that was coming.
Excellent. Got there. Dana?
I also don't remember how I first heard of the site. I think it was people I play with in real life. I had heard it mentioned or referenced enough times that at some point I just went online and went to the site and started using it as a tool at that point. And then roughly around then, I had been talking, some friends and I had been talking about, hey, let's try making a podcast. And our first kind of initial plan was to let's talk about real specific things like, hey, why are you running cancel when there's a dozen different variants of cancel that are better than cancel? Do you know what's more boring than watching paint dry? Listening to paint dry. So that's a miserable thing to talk about on a podcast. So we didn't do that, but I had this whole thing kind of written out about cancel, and I go to EDHREC to do EDHREC things, and they have articles now. Well, okay, maybe it's something you could write about versus talk about in a way that's interesting. So same thing, I reached out to Jason and sent him kind of the rough breakdown of what was essentially podcast notes for myself about things to talk about that you should run instead of cancel. And that was my first column, which is in the margins talking about this card you shouldn't run because there's, X amount of variants that are slightly better and you should make those upgrades.
Yeah, it seemed to work out. And then Matt.
So I also have no idea how I originally heard of EDHREC. I know it was just always was there from the beginning. But I remember I first got involved with the site. I emailed Jason actually before we started doing content because I knew he had Brainstorm Brewery. They loosely did content, maybe, kind of, sort of, not really. But I emailed him with a pitch. My original series was, I called it the Singleton Guild Wheel, where I built a deck for every guild color combination and I only had one copy of every card in the entire 10 decks. So I kind of took everybody on how to take everything a little bit deeper. How do you make theme decks? How do you make sure there's no overlap between all 10? But that series was very limited. Like I only had 10 articles to go off of. So I turned to everybody as we were kind of going around. And that was when we first started. I was one of the original writers. Mason Brantley, he and I are two of the OGs, I guess. But after my first series was done, I kind of turned to everybody and said, hey, what do we have going on, or what do we not have going on that I could do and just add just to what we're doing? And they said, well, you do play tournament Magic. You do, travel and go play in GPs and IQs and all that. Like, why don't you take 60 card decks and turn them into commander decks? Because there's plenty of crossover. How do you're playing this deck, it rotated out, turn it into a commander deck. And so that's where I kind of picked up and I turned it into the 60-100 series. That's been my shtick ever since. And basically I take, for example, EDHRECcast. Mm-hmm. It's a standard deck, and I say, okay, so you have the deck. How do we keep the play style, the feel of the deck, but then we turn it into a viable commander deck? So we make Niv Mizzet Perrin the commander, and we add either a bunch of other Drakes or a bunch of kind of spell slinger type of effects, because with the standard deck, you cast a bunch of spells for cheap. You maybe have your Goblin Electromancer, get your Arclight Phoenix out, and it's kind of an aggro tempo deck-ish. How do we get that feel into commander? So, we expand the card selection a little bit, and then we just keep the spirit of the deck, but we make it into something that you can actually sit down and, play in a 100-card singleton format. Other decks, gosh, I mean, I've covered Living End, I've covered Aristocrats, all sorts of fun stuff. And it's nice because there's always tournament Magic going on, so I always have material to draw from.
Oh, I bet you had a field day with Eldrazi Winter.
That was when I was wrapping up, but as soon as I actually didn't mind Eldrazi Winter because I was playing Merfolk back then in Modern. And so when you have 8 Spreading Seas effects, you're just like, okay.
Yeah, you're all right.
Yeah, it was fine. But I did cover the Eldrazi decks. I turned it into an Animar deck because go figure, Eldrazi and Animar are best buds.
Sure.
But yeah, it's always fun just to kind of show some parallels, and I kind of use the site a little bit differently. I know a lot of players will look at a commander and fill out their deck lists. I kind of zoom in on the 99. So when I did that Animar deck, I went to Thought-Knot Seer because we have cards for individual cards, not just legendary creatures. So I went to Thought-Knot Seer. Okay, what are the top commanders here? What else is getting played in the 99? And I kind of build decks for my articles that way, rather than here's a commander, let's zoom in. I take the card that goes in the 99 and then I zoom out a little bit.
The podcast is fantastic. You guys are, you have, like I said before, you have great chemistry. It's informative as well as being very entertaining. What was the genocide, so to speak? I know I'm driving the English major crazy with my my crazy terminology.
I love it.
But what was the genocide of the three of you coming together and kind of spearheading the content creation as far as podcasting or video creation goes for the site?
Well, Joey's the only one that they wanted to begin with.
Oh,
that's not entirely true. No. First of all, thank you for saying that we're informative and entertaining. That's very nice of you. And yay, good. That's what we're hoping to be. The podcast was something, yes, I did kind of push for it a little bit more than maybe anyone else, but the way that it kind of worked, just the way that all three of us came together, like Matt, Dana, and I have not actually met in person yet. We're all doing this remotely. I'm in Seattle and they're off in the Midwest doing Midwest things.
I'm in Colorado.
Whatever. You're English major, not geography. Don't know where maps
You're
are.
You're in the mid-ish West.
Yeah. For us, though, I don't know, we were very interested in addition to the article content that we were doing. There's a bunch of numbers on EDHREC, but they need context. So that's the point of the articles, and that would also be the point of the podcast as well. We try to, say, oh, this card is showing up in 74% of these decks. Why is that? And so that's what the podcast is there for. And kind of a whole bunch of the writers were interested in being part of the podcast. So we all kind of auditioned, I guess. We got into different pods, different groups of people, and would all record sample things for then Don and Jason to listen to see whether or not they liked those groups, they liked the chemistry. It just sort of, I don't know, it could have been a reality TV show now that I'm saying it. Like, we all lip synced for our lives to get to like actually hear. And so it ended up this being a pretty good combination. We did like, goodness, probably 5 or 6 sample things before we even put out a single episode. So yeah, we were just interested in giving more context to the numbers on the site, and we all, kept on going at it to try and find a good combination of people who would have good perspectives to bring. And just sort of like you can see with our articles, like I do a very comparative style of analysis, and Dana is all about incremental advantages, and then Matt is zooming out from within the 99. Like, those are all different perspectives that became very helpful to bring into that podcast.
That's a good explanation. I think it helps that the way we write about the site actually uses the site in a way that translates to talking about it on a podcast. So I think that helped a lot too. We get to actually kind of promote the site, if you will, without having to actively attempt to promote it. Like, it's a tool we actually use when we play Commander and write about Commander and talk about Commander. So it kind of becomes an effortless thing for us to then talk about the site when we're doing a podcast, because it's just how we look at Magic and how we look at Commander.
I too I've done so many shows with our mutual friend Jason Alt. I've never officially met him. I saw him walk by me at a GP Vegas. I went to go talk to him, and then I'm like, man, he looks mean, and then I turned around and walked away.
Well, we're actually going to meet for the first time next week. We're going to get together in Kansas City, so we're the most random location possible. We're going to Magic Fest Kansas City and going to meet there.
Perfect. And Joey, I'm sure you and I will run into each other by sheer proximity, especially for Magic Fest Seattle, because I'll be there. I live in Seattle as well. So
that I did not know. Now I am excited.
And Matt, you just got to sit there and chill in the Midwest of Colorado.
In the Midwest of it. I mean, I am in Colorado Springs, which is a good way to put it. Yeah.
There we go.
But I grew up in Kansas City, so I'm excited. I'm going to see. It's kind of like a wedding where you have like 5 different groups of friends all coming together to meet, and you're trying to give your attention to everybody. That'll be like me, because I'm going to have all my friends from home, and then I'll have Joey and Dana that I'm meeting for the first time, and it'll be weird because I'm going to meet Dana, and then we're getting a hotel together, so we'll see how that goes.
It's going to be magical.
Gonna play many games of Magicals, yes.
All the Magicals. I think you guys have done roughly around 50 episodes. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course.
About 60.
60 episodes. 60. What has been your favorite moment so far? Favorite guest spots? Anything that really like just jumps out at you?
I would say having Benny Smith on the show was a big deal, because he's somebody I've always admired, and he was the first person that felt like I shouldn't be talking to him.
Yeah,
he's not somebody that should be talking to me. I'm not important enough to have him on the show. So that was a big deal, because I just have a lot of respect for the guy, and the fact that I could engage him in a conversation about Commander like that was just surreal.
I 100% agree. I was never more nervous or giddy when I had him on the Hive Mind. I was just like, you are just like Mount Rushmore type.
Yeah, right. That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm just a dude. What are you doing talking to me? Go do something more important.
I mean, I will echo Benny. Having him on the podcast was awesome, just because he's been so prolific for the format for so long. Yeah. Mark Nestico, he was on the podcast a while ago. His content with his satire, I always adored. So having him on the podcast was great, just because he's one of the reasons I wanted to make Magic content.
Yep.
As far as like moments, I mean, probably our after hours, actually, just pre and post show, just farting around with 2 guys that like I just genuinely like talking to, and I would call my buddies or good friends. Just forming the relationship with these guys has been just super fun too, because I literally would not have met them otherwise.
I mean, we've had some really good fortune with guests. Like Benny and Mark Nestico were awesome. We also had Gavin Verhey on the show as well, and he was extraordinary. That dude is affable and knows everything, which is just the really just the coolest thing. We recently chatted with Cameron Vachon from Lab Maniacs, who helped correct a lot of my misgivings about competitive EDH, which was really refreshing. Andy Cassidy, we just actually had him on the show to talk about EDHREC's partnership with Architect, which was so awesome. In terms of favorite moments in the show, I really enjoyed our episode. Oh goodness, it was a while ago. It was called "Solving the Boros Problem," which was quite fun. There have been a whole bunch of. Oh, okay. Actually, personal favorite was our signature spellbook episode, where we sort of
that was yeah.
Yeah, we created our own personal signature spellbook, sort of like you'd find signature spellbook Jace or whatever, but with cards that we felt represented us, and that was also really, really great. But yeah, it's been an absolute treat having this place to chat about the best game in the world, and to do so with really cool personalities as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, having Gavin on definitely felt like, oh my gosh, like this is legit. Like we actually are like doing something good. That Gavin Verhey of all people is coming on our podcast.
Fun fact, by the way, we've only had one guest on the show who forgot that we're family friendly and isn't supposed to curse, and that guest was Don Miner.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Jason.
Who created EDHREC. So.
No, even Jason could watch his mouth, but Don was the only. He's the only person we've had to edit out.
That's awesome. No, it's great. We always, he and I always joke before every director's cut. Oh, we're gonna really tone it down this time, broaden out the audience, and then we'll get like 20 minutes in. F this, F that. Yeah, it's good though, right? It's fine. So I've talked to a lot of other like niche format podcasts, like your Cody from Fishin' to Meerfolk podcast, Aaron from Turn One Thoughtseize, guys from Masters of Modern, Ben Bateman and Kessler. I love those guys. All these casts, like yourself, have managed to keep each show fresh and entertaining, even with such a focused scope. How does your cast manage to maintain the quality and diverse subject matter while still keeping it within the EDH wheelhouse?
Well, it helps that the EDH wheelhouse is so huge. I mean, it encompasses all of Magic. So that's definitely very helpful. But also, I mean, there's so much data to pick apart on EDHREC. And the numbers, like I mentioned before, they're just sitting there. And the numbers aren't inherently correct. They could have a bunch of biases in them, like ad populum bias or something like that. Like sometimes players get it wrong. Maybe the numbers on this particular card are only popular because that's a card that came in a precon. Just because it's got a high percentage doesn't mean it's necessarily the right choice. So we've got just an absolute ton of material to go through and to evaluate cards on that front alone.
Well, and like we said too, I think the fact that the past year has given us so much to talk about, like we could probably have 60 episodes just in the past year of all just the cool stuff that they've kept giving us. The fact that Commander's always getting new cards keeps it really fresh. And I think just how diverse all three of us, how we like to play the game, how we like to play the format. I mean, Joey as a necromancer himself, and then Dana, who always just fine-tunes everything, and then me, who just wants to cast big green spells.
Yeah, the format itself does a lot of the heavy lifting. I mean, when a new set comes out, there aren't 10 new modern decks that spring up into existence. When a new set comes out, there's 8 or 10 brand new Commander decks that are now suddenly a thing that exists in the wild. And sometimes those are pretty unique decks that are nothing like anything we've seen before. That's a special thing in Commander that other formats don't have. So it constantly gives us something fresh and new to talk about in a way that you just don't get if you're talking about Modern or a different format.
Again, it goes back to with just like such a wealth of data that the site eventually accumulates as well. Whenever there's data, we have an opportunity to interrogate that. That's my favorite part of EDHREC is like, if everyone were to build the average deck as according to the most popular cards, that's not going to be fun. And we're not here to say like, oh, these cards are right. We're here to interrogate it. On our show, we challenge the stats every episode because we think that there are a lot of things that deserve to see more play than they're currently getting or deserve to see less play than they're currently getting. And when you look at a deck and you see that someone is playing Scour of Existence over Path to Exile, well, you should evaluate that critically. We challenge the stats for exactly that reason. You look at a commander's page and it could have that commander could have 3 different build paths on it. It might be like a mishmash of, this is infect and its +1 counters and its planeswalkers. And so then you have to take all of those things apart. There's a whole bunch of stuff to try and find out so you can get the actual strategy that you want to talk about. So we've kind of got a boundless amount of material. If anything, it's difficult to keep the scope away from EDH, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's so much fun to design for Commander also, even when you're not trying to make a focused Commander product. where you're always going to have at least 15, 20 cards that are going to be, and I'll kind of let you guys be the judge of that. Like every new set at least has a couple Commander staples, it seems like, where that can't be said for the other kind of competitive formats. You're not going to always get a legacy staple in the new standard set, but you probably will find some EDH, diamonds in the rough. So yeah, it seems like they do just kind of crank out de facto great Commander cards to always kind of keep it fresh. I still don't know how my buddy Cody from Fishin' manages just to keep the subject matter about Merfolk, but he's doing the blue god's work, so gotta love him for it. So how close are we to ever getting a digital Commander product as polished as Arena?
That's a long ways. There's so much to track for Commander. I don't think it would happen for Commander. I think if they did something from, was it Kaladesh that Arena first had? That was the first set.
It was.
If they did something Kaladesh forward, I think that'd be doable. But to get the real feel for Commander that I think so many players want, I don't know if that's possible. And honestly, that might be one of the few reasons that Arena's still kicking, or not Arena, Moto. I know they still run MCQs and whatnot, but man, I think the Commander player base probably would not want to play such a limited version to do something like Kaladesh forward. I think that's one of the reasons that Brawl is kind of struggling. I think it's a very interesting format, but I think people, don't like having limitations. They want to play whatever they want. And yeah, I think that might be one of the reasons Brawl hasn't taken off like I think it should have, because the games that I have seen it played look interesting. They look fun.
I love Arena. I was actually part of the alpha for Arena, which was just so much fun. But I have to agree with Matt. I don't think that a multiplayer option is actually as viable as we would like it to be. And I don't know. I'm actually okay with that. I enjoy the tactileness of cardboard. An article that's kind of always resonated with me was and this was a while ago, probably a decade ago, James Bianca's In Defense of Cardboard article, where he's talking all about how board games and card games are such a great solution to like digital screen fatigue. And that really resonates with me. Arena is impressive. The only reason that I don't play it is just because of that screen fatigue. I'm on a screen all day, all the time. But also just like the fact of multiplayerness on that interface is a lot more difficult to implement than I think people realize. So as much as I would love that be an option eventually, but I don't think we're close. And I think that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it okay, I think it might be a good thing for Wizards as a company, because it's very easy to lose those standard players who currently right now are cracking packs to Arena. Whereas as long as you have those Commander players out there who have no choice but to play in paper, I think that gives them a revenue stream to make them continue to print cards for everybody. That's reliable and always going to be there. So while I appreciate them adding more Commander cards to the standard pool, which is something that I think they've been doing lately intentionally, I also think that's maybe a business decision in terms of them realizing they need to pitch to Commander players, because that's the market that can't move to digital.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of nerfing the best part about the Commander experience.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
That is the poker night, right? That is the social the most social aspect of this game is to go and hang out with your friends and play giant games of Commander. And I think that you guys are really on to something, because I was just like, of course, I bought into the whole bells and whistles of Arena. I'm like, why can't we? It would just be perfect then, But I don't think we need it. I think you guys said it best, where it's just better left as that kind of sacrosanct format where people still have to pick up the cards and get their fingers dirty. So, I think that we should be celebrating preserving that aspect of it for sure. So
yeah, as much as I don't like politics in Commander, you can't politic a digital screen.
At least well. Right, yeah.
Well. Yeah.
We're kind of rounding out the cast to put you all on the spot. What are your short and long-term goals in the game and with the podcast? with whatever you could divulge, of course.
I mean, Joey has some pretty. I mean, Joe, you've never been, mute about your goals with it. Why don't you start us?
I mean, so yes, of the three of us, I'm the one who's done the great designer search every time and fallen very, very close to the finish line, which hurts me in the feels.
Flying in vigilance.
Constant vigilance. It's how do I phrase this? I love this game. I actually have a Magic the Gathering tattoo. It is my mana cost. It is right here because I think that it's really clever. And I alone think that it's really clever. I just absolutely love this game. I'm the type of person who judges things very critically, so that when I actually find something I love, I just go all in. But like Magic the Gathering is one of my deepest passions, and additionally, like creating content is also a thing that I really enjoy. That's why I'm a creative writing major. That's why I'm editing articles now. Like this kind of is one of my goals is to be able to fuse the things that I love, Magic and writing. So I'm kind of living my dream right now, but what Matt is hinting to is that, yeah, it would be a really darn cool thing to actually work at Wizards of the Coast and be involved in that aspect, like actually being a piece of the game. The things that I love are part of me, and I would love to be a part of the things that I love as well. So, that is certainly a goal, probably a lofty one, but I'm really happy with how things have turned out right now.
Whereas I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum here. I've got a kid. I have a pretty stable job as it is. I've got a parole officer who's kind of finally easing up on me. So life's going, no.
That is not true.
No, but so this is something I did for fun initially, and I started doing a podcast because I thought it was something that would be amusing to do as part of my hobby. And then I kept adding things to that, whether it's writing for EDHREC or now doing this show. So I don't know. Actually, it's a hobby, but I keep expanding on it, and it takes up more and more of my time. I don't know what that means or where that's going. I have no plan beyond that. If I'm doing the same thing in 3 years, I'll still be enjoying it, I think. So I guess I'll just take it as it comes. I'm probably going to keep doing more and more because it seems to be what I'm doing. So I think I'm heading in that direction. What that means, I don't know, but we'll find out.
Excellent.
Well, it'll be funny. In 3 years, you'll have another podcast. Dana actually has two podcasts.
Right. Yeah. And that was another thing that I want to mention. You also co-host the Commander Central podcast. How do you manage to juggle those two different shows about in the same arena? No pun intended.
Yeah. Joey drives the ship on the EDHRECcast. So number one, that makes my life easier. He does a lot of the hard work. But number two, if you think about it literally as driving, if you're driving across town, odds are you're going to take a different route than the person who's driving at a different point in time. And you're going to see different things and go down different streets and have a whole different experience. And I've just found that by virtue of Joey being in charge of this show, I just go to places I don't go on the other one that I would take myself if I was driving.
He takes the scenic route.
Maybe, yeah. But for whatever reason, it just winds up being different things because of that. I think the one difference is on the other show, I've kind of quit using EDHREC data for things in a way I used to. I used to oftentimes cite data for different stuff, and I don't do that anymore because we do enough of that on EDHRECcast. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I think it just kind of naturally, there's so much stuff in Commander that it just takes care of itself.
Excellent.
I will reiterate that if it weren't for Joey, Dana and I would probably just ramble for 30 minutes.
It would be awesome.
And then we'd be like, oh yeah, we have this docket. Well, actually, correction, there wouldn't be a docket because Joey does that too.
Right, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Just a blank page we're looking at trying to figure out who wrote butt stuff on it.
So Matt,
my co-host, ladies and gentlemen.
What seat in the boat do you sit in?
As far as long-term goals and whatever, so short-term, I want to make sure that we survive Kansas City. I'm sure all three of us will play a game. We're probably going to play a game, and there might be a moment where Joey does something, and I chuck a card across the room, or I don't know. Tempers will flare.
Oh, geez.
Not a mana flare, but tempers. Long-term, I guess I don't directly aspire to work for Wizards. I think that'd be great. I love this game. I actually, when Trick Jarrett was the community manager, I thought he had one of the coolest jobs in Magic because he he got to literally just bring people together. That was what he did. And that's one thing, like I said, that Magic has given me, and I would love to be able to give that back to the game. So, if that position ever opens up, I would take a second glance at it for sure. Other than that, though, I'm really enjoying the ride so far.
Yeah.
Just kind of where we've gotten, having some guests on, having Gavin on, having Nestico and Benny and all the other writers for EDHREC and everybody that we've had on. It's so weird because I still imagine myself as just a regular player, but here we are, and I have strangers that ask me for my opinion on decks. I'm like, I'm not qualified for this. They're like, oh well,
and we
I
agree
guess
he is not.
Yes, but it's weird, like imagining where we are now, and like we want to keep this going. I definitely have enjoyed it so far, and I would love to see how far we take this. So yeah, for me, I guess I'm enjoying the ride. If WotC ever, like I said, opens up that community manager, I might take a gander at it. Or I would love to be on the play design team. My background is in operations, so like refining processes and all that kind of fun stuff is my thing. But yeah, I'm very content with where we are and where we're going.
Well, yeah, you guys are just knocking it out of the park, and I assume that you're going to continue to. So, yeah, I mean, before I let you guys go, this is where we round out the show, but I'd be remiss not to throw you into the game. Face the D20. So, before I let you go, we're going to have each of you roll a spin down, and whatever number it lands on will correlate to a non-Magic the Gathering related question, so people could get to know you a little bit more behind the cards about the actual people. So let's see. Joey, you're driving the boat, so why don't you roll the dice first?
I don't have a spin down with me, so I'm using a random number generator.
That'll work.
And it has given me the number. It has given me the number 13, which is either lucky or unlucky.
The number one rolled on, because I know the question so well, but it's number one thing on your bucket list.
Oh man. I know
this is
dead air, not
wild,
good radio.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I don't. Do I have a bucket list? I don't know. Climb a mountain? No, that's not it. Write a book. Let's go with that. Write a book.
Okay. I was gonna say you live right by Rainier, so start that bucket list tomorrow.
No, that sounds dangerous. Not an adventurous person. Read so the bucket list is either read all the books or write one myself.
Perfect.
All right, so I do have a dice, so I will roll that. I have 10.
10. Most embarrassing drunk story that you could tell on the internet.
So I was a bartender actually for 6 years. So goodness.
That's how you know it's going to be good. Oh god.
Well, when there's so many years and so many stories to weed through, I think one of the things, not really embarrassing, but I probably wasn't the most wise. So as a bartender, I always had just a ton of cash. And when you're 24 and under the influence, you probably shouldn't have a lot of cash on hand.
Sure.
Especially when your bartender buddies are all working. So we did this thing. And so if you would have done Bar Rescue, the show Bar Rescue for our bar, John Taffer would have had a stroke.
I love that show.
Oh, I love it too, and I was just like, I would have been such a bad employee. But basically, whenever other bartenders would have come in, we basically were like, oh, it's $1 for that triple, Jim Beam or whatever, your glass of scotch that's that big.
Cue Dana's giant drink.
Yeah, exactly. Like we would have charged Dana like, oh, it's $2 tonight, yeah, and it's 90% alcohol. So, basically $2, but we reach into our pockets and like there's a fistful of ones. We're like, there's your tip, and just chuck like $30 at somebody, just because hey, it's my buddy. And I was in a college town too, so I was in Manhattan, Kansas when I was doing this, which is where Kansas State University is. So there's a fairly big state school. Then there's Fort Riley, which is an army base right outside town. So there's all these cultures meshing. And so we just go to any bar in the bar district, and I knew everybody. So I probably would spend more money on tips than I did on my liquor. And I got plenty of liquor. So...
Yeah. Dana.
I know more about Matt now.
There's a reason I'm still paying off my student loans, and that's a big reason.
Well, I got an 11.
You got an 11.
Yeah.
MCU or Star Wars?
It
doesn't feel like a fair fight coming off of Endgame.
does not, and I will. Man, I pause to think about it, but I don't have to. MCU was way more interesting than Star Wars, by a large margin at this point. I think, to me. Now, whether or not that can maintain going forward, I don't know. But I like just did a rewatch of all the movies leading up to Endgame with my kid. I enjoyed all of them.
Yep.
Front to back. I have no. Yeah, it's MCU.
It does make you feel gross saying it, but right? Like it's like almost like you have to say Star Wars, but you really don't anymore. They just made a better product.
They did.
I think if you take out the prequels, it's a very different story, though.
Maybe that's definitely an anchor dragging the entire ship down.
But
Jake Lloyd.
I love that you got the question that is most likely to be controversial. Just by the way,
Sure.
Dana sometimes has the hot takes.
Yeah.
Oh, that isn't. I don't think that hot of it isn't exactly a hot take, but
Yeah.
Could be. It could be. It's more controversial than what's on your bucket list. That's all I'm saying.
that's true.
I think someone answered that question Star Trek, and I'm like, oh, all right, fair.
Get out. Did you just hang up on them right away? Is that what the correct response?
Pretty much. Yeah, I'm not a Trek fan, but I mean, I get it. People that are like for real. All right, you guys all survived, faced the D20. How do you feel?
All right.
Fresh.
Like I climbed a mountain, but also that I didn't climb a mountain.
You'll never see Joey at the base of Mount Rainier anytime soon.
No, you really won't.
He didn't even make it through the Carplucin forest.
Oh.
Yeah, the only mountains that you'll see me at are when I'm playing Mono Red. Like, that's it.
Any individual upcoming projects you could tease or spoil for the group?
Come find us in Kansas City.
Yeah.
We're going to be there for most of the weekend just playing games, and we're looking forward to playing with anybody who wants to play games with us.
And then also something that's kind of fun that's coming to the site eventually. We don't know exactly when, but it is something that Don has announced to make sure that we, get on top of it. Is that we are kind of working on a Wikipedia style project on EDHREC. Our articles are just our opinions. We think that X card is too popular, that Y strategy is clever, or that Z synergy is useful. But those are just, again, our personal takes. And what isn't necessarily as available is sort of a go-to guide on, for example, what group hug does and how it wins, or what Reanimator's strengths and weaknesses are, or what Voltron even means in the context of EDH. That's the kind of long-lasting information that we're also interested in providing as a resource. So that is something that we're kind of working on behind the scenes. We don't know when it will be ready, but we would like it to be ready very much. So we are also kind of working on that. That could be something hopefully in the near future, but we don't know how near that future is just yet.
All right, Cass from EDHREC Podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Matt, where can everyone find you?
So you can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Mathimus55. It's MATHIMUS55.
And Joey?
You can find me at JosephMSchultz on Twitter. And and check out our articles on EDHREC. We don't just do the podcast. The articles are also pretty darn cool.
And Dana Roach.
Yeah, I write there as well, and I'm on Twitter at Dana Roach. And you mentioned my other show, Commander Central. I am on there twice a week as well.
Thank you guys so much once again for Planeswalking In. You can find me right here on this very channel, They Said We Said, doing this stuff like the Hive Mind 10th Street Hooligans every week, our weekly live Magic show. You could also find all the movie stuff that we do with another friend mutual friend of ours, Jason Alt, and I talk about a single director and all the things they do. Why do we do this to ourselves every other week? We don't know. We haven't figured it out yet. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at OrzovDunn. You can also head on over to cardsphere.com because they're simply the very best place to buy, sell, and trade your paper Magic the Gathering cards online. Until next time, Planeswalkers, I'll see you all in the multiverse.